time. You ready? What's up, nerds? How are you? Good. So I'd like to start with telling you all, put your hands together for you. You guys are amazing. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to nerd out again. I'm going to try not to, but also for the speaker, try not to presentations like I did by walking in front of it all the time. So, this is Nerd Night. Thank you for coming. So Nerd Night has a bit of a, you know, we're evolving. It's an identity crisis. So our tagline is, be there and be square, which you see on our social media all the time. In the early 2000s, when people had cable, they used to say it was like the Discovery Channel with beer. But how many of you have cable anymore? Who has cable? Yeah, that's what I thought. So now, people are calling it more like boozy TED Talks, right? So make sure that your drink is full, and let's get ready to learn with each other. So my name is Flip Awesome Aguilera. Yes, my middle name literally is Awesome. This is my awesome wife over here, Maritza. And this is us. This is us at Nerd Night in Miami, the day that I did a talk and asked her to marry me. So Nerd Night is in over 100 cities all over the world. So if you're traveling, even though COVID has made that a little bit weird, but if you're traveling, look for Nerd Night, connect with fellow nerds, because why not make your brain stronger while you're traveling abroad? So, how many of you are here for the first time? Raise hands. Yes. I know what all of you are thinking. All of you are thinking, if I had to present in a room full of drunk people, what would I talk about? So, if that is you, you can connect with us at nerdnightcos@gmail.com. Send us an email. We will follow up with you because we are always looking for people to speak about interesting and fun things. Greg with 3 G's is going to speak soon. All right, so follow, like, review, share us on Facebook. We're at Nerd Night COS. On the gram, we are at Nerd Night COS. And today, we are doing a contest. So whoever gives us a review by the end of tonight, we have a little surprise bag that Samantha is holding over there with a few nerdy things in it. So whoever gives us a review will get that bag tonight. So hopefully you guys have to fight because all of you are giving reviews, right? So now, let's see. You can find us at cos.nerdnight.com. We don't really do much on there, but this is kind of what it looks like. And if you see here, this is the video of when I asked her to marry me. So you can check that out and, you know, tell me how I did. And can we please put our hands together for Coati? These guys are amazing. This is an amazing venue, amazing food, amazing drinks, amazing energy. So we love them. Thank you very much, Coati. And of course, thank you to you. So give yourself another hand. Are we ready? Are we ready to learn in a fun and engaging way? All right, so here are our presentations today. Presentation number 1 is Norse gods represented in modern culture. Blonde-haired, cape-wearing superheroes by Braeden Goggans. Number 2 is Marvelous Microbes, Get the Dirt on What's Going On in Your Soil by Kelly Bull. And presentation number 3 is Olympic and Paralympic athletes, the millimeters, seconds, scores, and stories that have us cheering Team USA by Michelle, Dusserre, Farrell. I hope I said that right. All right, and with that, let's call the youngest Nerd Night COS presenter to date at 16 years old. Braeden.
All right, let's see if I can figure out how to use this thing. As a trip and fall, okay. As Flip said, thank you, my friend. My name is Braeden Goggans. I'm a 16-year-old junior who, like most teenagers, spends most of his hours locked up in this room. However, instead of playing video games or watching TV, I decided that I would research ancient peoples and their mythologies. And I led to the Norse gods and Vikings, and I was just automatically hooked with their Vikings and axes and getting drunk all the time. So, gods. We all like gods. We all know Thor, we know Odin, we know Loki. They're big in today's society. But as always, we need to know where everybody starts. So I'm going to start. Oh, that was right. In the beginning. In the beginning, there were two realms, one named Muspelheim and one named Niflheim. I know these words are hard. But Niflheim was cold and Muspelheim was really hot and fiery. Niflheim had ice and rivers. And in the middle was a giant black gap named Gigunga, or a giant void per se, nothingness at all. And then one day the fires from Muspelheim rose up to Niflheim, and Niflheim started to leak and melt. And all the water went to the center of the Gigunga. And then one of the rivers decided to flood. As always, there's a great flood. And then the venomous waters met with the ice that was forming in Gigunga and formed the first being, Ymir, the frost giant. And while the ice was forming, another being came, and I know it's going to sound strange, it was a cow named Amdala. I think I pronounced it Amdala. And Ymir fed on Amdala's milk while Amdala licked the ice of Ymir, and that's how they fed off each other. But Ymir decided to start sweating, and his armpits gave birth to frost giants, and so did his legs. And while Amdala was licking the ice, another being was born named Bordi. Now Bordi and the gods, or not the gods, the frost giantesses, they did their whole family thing, went down the line, and we got to the first beings, or gods, Billy, Bay, and Odin. And Odin, they didn't like the frost giants much that Ymir was creating. They were like, nah, this ain't for me, this ain't for me. So they decided to go and kill the father of all the frost giants, Ymir. And then they killed him, brutally murdered him, and took all of his body parts and made the earth, or what's called Midgard, in the center of the tree of life named Yggdrasil. Now, while they were making this, they found two trees, elm and something else. I think it was oak. And they made the first beings. First beings, first humans. And that is why Odin is so important. He's the All-Father, not because he's the king of all gods, but because he created the first human beings and was part of the three that created everything else. He is the All-Father. And that leads us to the Norse Odin. Norse Odin may not have flashy robes, but he looks more like Gandalf. He is a wanderer like Gandalf, and like Gandalf, he is a wizard. Do you see a common trend? So he is not only like Gandalf, but he's the god of war, poetry, magic, and wisdom. Everyone knows he's about wisdom. He's a smart guy. And while he was searching for wisdom, he liked hospitality. Who doesn't? You go to your friend's house on Thanksgiving, you knock on the door, and you expect them to be nice to you, offer you food, and not murder you in their house. So he wrote a whole book on it. It's called The Havamal, Words of the Highland, poetry book about what you should do and treat people better. And this was a centered thing in Norse culture. It was big. They did it for everyone, every hearth or home. They decided hospitality was the best. As I say, he's wanted for wisdom, but wisdom does not come without sacrifice. And this is a big part of Odin's story. Who knows he has one eye? There is, 3 of them, one eye. So the story of this is he went to his uncle. We all know he doesn't have frost giants, yet his uncle Mimir is a frost giant, sitting in a well. He says, yo, uncle, may I please have some of that water so I can get smart wisdom and be the best I can be? And his uncle was like, you killed my brother, so can I have your eye? And Odin was like, yep, got it. Perfectly reasonable price, and just threw his eye in the water. And then he was able to drink from the well and become one of the wisest gods ever. But that's not the only thing he sacrificed. He also decided to hang himself from the trees of Yggdrasil. Does anyone remember what I mentioned Yggdrasil before? The world tree. And from that, he got runes, or what was the language of them, the elder Futhark, younger Futhark, magic. Runes, this was their introduction to language. He founded. He's not the father of people, he's also the father of magic and language. He gave the Norse everything they wanted. And then someone else had to come along, and his name was Loki. Who knows who Loki is? Right, all right, great. Loki, god of mischief, but he's not just a god. He is what is called Etin, or a half-giant, half-god. And giants, we already clarified, we don't like giants. Now, many people see Loki as like, hey, just the god of mischief, but who's heard of Jormungandr, the world serpent? Yes. That's his kid. Yeah, weird. I know. Yeah, I know, right? And then he also had Odin's eight-legged horse. I'll get back to him in later. But Jormungandr, Sleipnir, and Hel. Sleipnir is the horse. Hel is the goddess of Hel. Those are all his children, and he's also, again, a giant, but Odin's sworn blood brother. And we're going to get back to that in a second. And now the big guy, the big honcho, Thor, the mightiest of all the gods, the one who kills giants, the people's god, the drinker, the fun one, the one who rides a chariot with 2 goats and makes rivers. He was loved by the people because he would give them fertility of land, of things, and they loved to be fertile back then. He would just give everything that they wanted. That was their god. He gave them protection. Odin gave them wisdom, but he was the main one, which is why we see many statues of him and his hammer Mjolnir, giant wearing, or what's that triangle thing right there. Now we're going to get back to this picture in a minute, but we need to start off the beloved Marvel Comics. I'm sorry if I offend people. Odin, very flashy, very armory. He doesn't look like a wanderer, he looks like a king. And in the movies, he is portrayed as a king. Thor is supposed to be his next up, but he is not king because they voted for him. He is king because he is the wisest. He drew out his eye and killed himself so he could be here. This is Odin. And another thing is Odin has 2 ravens everywhere in the culture. Hugin and Munin are thought in memory, and they give him everything he knows up to 9 realms around Yggdrasil. And in the movie, he is asleep for half, which my father and I had an argument about. He said it was about him being wise and teaching Thor or something, but I disagree. I think he was underutilized. Okay. Then we go into Marvel's Loki. Now, I recently watched the show. It was a decent show. I'm not hating on Marvel this entire time. It was a good show. But throughout the entire series, he is Thor's brother. And as we clarified earlier, he is Odin's brother, which makes him Thor's uncle, the giant. It's weird, but they also make him crazy power hungry. He almost kills his brother for it.
He's clearly.
He goes back in time and tries to betray the timekeeper so he can become the timekeepers. He wants power, but giants are not power hungry. They strictly like messing with people. They are the embodiment of destruction and chaos. Into fire. Earth. Everything on the earth was a giant's doing. Except for one, but we're not going to mention him. But this guy right here obviously wants to kill everybody. He wants to kill everyone and become the power of Marvel. That's just not how he is. Then we go to Marvel's Thor. Maybe? Marvel's Thor. The big blonde hair, witty, cape wearing, square hammered God we all love so much. He, number 1, is blonde. Now, throughout Norse culture, we have a lot of historical books which tell us very little since everything is written in runes, but one thing we do know is Thor is supposed to be redheaded. Redheaded. And also he's portrayed having a 6-pack abs. Now, fun fact, 6-pack abs, or abs in general, are actually a Greek social construct. They saw that as being perfect and the best warrior. And if you have abs, you were the best. Now, in 8th century Scandinavia, abs would have been a little unuseful for freezing cold temperatures. So, okay, but not only mention that, he is a drinker. Everyone knows he's a Thor. He drinks alcohol. He eats meals for 3 men. He drinks for 3 men. He eats and drinks everything, and that doesn't look like it. Later on, when he's all depressed, maybe, but then again, that's not Thor. Thor is just the glorious, giant, killing, God who drinks and eats everything and kills everything. And he rides a chariot with 2 goats, but where was that? Where was it? I personally would have loved to see that. Oh, here, Thanos. Red hair, chariot, Thor. Thor? Something else. Now moving forward, there's a great game coming out called God of War Ragnarok. Now Ragnarok is the end of all gods. I don't know how they're portraying it yet. It's kind of been hinted at at least. I don't know. But this is their Thor. Now everyone is hating on this Thor because they like the other Thor, the blonde-haired, witty, superhero guy that's not Thor. This big belly drinker, he looks like a strong man. Those guys that weigh like 300 heavy and lift everything. They can bench press, deadlift. That looks like a strong man right there. And then he has red hair, his mighty hammer, and this one looks more like a giant slaying dude. So we have this all pop culture thing we've had. These are just two Thors. There's been multiple in Vikings and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but none of them really look like this. And Marvel has the main Thor, the main guys that everyone looks to, but that's not almost correct. So going around like this and hating on things like this without knowing everything is just bad. And that is the Norse gods of Norse. And compared to Marvel and everything else, and the Norse gods, in my opinion, are way cooler than the Marvel ones. Way cooler. Questions? Any questions?
Ask again. If you have any questions, ask again.
Any questions?
Favorite Norse god?
Ooh.
And why?
My favorite Norse goddess is actually Hel. And because she's not evil, she's the caretaker of the dead. People portray her as this demon lady who likes to kill everything and is just dead. She is like the grandma of the dead. She leaves them in, she gives them food, she gives them cookies, and she takes care. Where everyone is like, there's a cool story which I like to reference a lot. There's a Christian story where Satan was sent down to hell and he met Hel. And he did not like Hel very much. He yelled at her, screamed at her, and guess who won that argument? Like most households, the women, Hel. That's why she's my favorite. Any other questions? Parker.
Least favorite Norse god?
Sif? Repeat the question. Louder. Oh, my bad. He asked which one's my least favorite Norse god. It's another goddess. It's Sif, because she's Thor's wife, who again was in Marvel, brown hair, don't really recognize her. I did.
You feel your face?
But she doesn't do anything. She just has long, blonde hair, and that's the extent of her powers.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. But
What made you want to get into learning about the Norse mythology? Repeat the
Let's
question.
repeat the question.
he asked why I wanted to get into Norse mythology in the first place. I was big into Greek. And then I started watching Vikings. It was an older show, relatively. But it was great. I loved Vikings. And then I was like, oh, cool, let me learn about their gods. And then I was like, this ain't Vikings. This isn't what happened. Then it took me down this strange road of where I just decided to go into ancient books, old Icelandic books. I've been learning old Icelandic just so I can read the books and then translating them. And I've been hooked. It's like a rabbit hole that I can't stop following for some reason. Honestly, if someone wants to pull me out, go ahead and try. I'll probably drag you in with me.
Yes. Thank you, Braeden. One more hand for Braeden. Yes. Woo. All right. So now comes a little part of Nerd Night that we all might enjoy, which is trivia. And for October, for Halloween, obviously, we're going to make it spooky trivia. So raise your hands like good little boys and girls, and I will call on you, and you can let us know. Please don't shout out any answers. We don't want to give things away. And if you have it right, we will, my lovely assistant here will throw you a nerd rope. So make sure you can catch. All right. First question, which mistress of the dark graduated from Palmer High School? This gentleman right over here. You. Elvira. Yes. Whoops. Bonus question. Who knows her real name? Hands. Bonus question. 1, 2, 3. Cassandra Peterson. That is her real name. All right. Question number 2 for the round. What famous magician died on Halloween? I know you guys know this. This gentleman. Yes. Harry Houdini. He departed this life on Halloween. What type of branches laid across a vampire's grave prevent it from rising at night?
Aspen?
Yes! Aspen branches. Aspen was also used for stakes, as it was believed that Christ's cross was made from aspen. I thought that was a kind of cool little thing since we have lots of aspen trees here. And that is all for this round. We're going to take a break. Please do not forget to follow, like, review, and share us on Facebook, Instagram. Review contest is going on. I haven't checked yet, but you guys can't be slacking because I have a really cool prize that I want to give out. So whoever has, we're going to check randomly before the start of our last speaker. I want to have these reviews in so that I can pick a winner at the end of the night, okay? All right, take a 10-15 minute break, refill your glasses. Don't forget to tip your bartenders. Treat everyone really nicely, grab some more food, and we'll be back in about 10-15 minutes.
All right. Let's see here. Yes, I can hear me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Everybody can hear me. All right, nerds. It's time for round 2. How was that first guy? How was Braeden, right? 16, super passionate. He's got a bright future if he keeps letting his curiosity lead him. So thank you, Braeden. All right, so now, let's see. I already did all this. So time out. Let me fast forward. Fast forward. And almost there. Boom. That's what I wanted. Yes. So are we ready for our next speaker? Miss Kelly. Come on up. We're going to learn about marvelous microbes and all the fantastic things in our soil.
Don't be rude.
Project.
Yeah, I actually.
Project.
Yeah.
All about microbes.
Good.
Yes.
All right. So down will take me to my first one. Okay. All right. Hi, you guys.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I have been in love with plants for as long as I can remember. I studied horticulture in college. I worked in plant nurseries. I worked on an organic farm. I became a teacher so that I could teach people how to grow plants and their own food. And now I own my own landscape design company. And through all this whole life of growing plants, I have learned that in order to be the very best plant mom I can be, soil is absolutely everything. So I want you guys to hold your hand out. And now imagine in the palm of your hand, you have a palm full of soil. You are now holding more living organisms in your hand than there are humans on this planet. That's amazing, right? Okay, so bacteria, fungus, protozoa, nematodes, they're all microscopic. You have to use a microscope to see them, but they're this in this bustling world in the soil beneath our feet, and they are doing incredible jobs every day, and they're really freaking cool. So in order to explain how important microbes are, I think it's important to take you on the journey from dirt to soil. So I want you to imagine that you are back in 1930s Oklahoma Dust Bowl, okay? So you're sitting around the campfire with your friends, you're warm and cozy, like Grace the Rat style, and the wind is blowing dirt in your face, in your teeth. It's terrible. How did we get here to Dust Bowl? So it didn't help that there was a huge drought going on, but we also were trying to feed a lot of hungry mouths. And we wanted to do it as efficiently as possible. So what we did was this. We used a tractor and a plow. Seems like a really great idea because you don't need a lot of labor to run a tractor and a plow, and you end up with this nice, really fluffy soil. It's churning up the weeds. It seems really great, right? Well, imagine you are a soil microorganism, and you're living in soil. You've got your happy soil life. You've got your happy microbe friends and your happy microbe family, and you've got a really fulfilling job doing really important things for the world. You have this crazy active sex life. You're making like thousands of babies a day. So life seems pretty great, right? Well, now imagine this tractor tornado comes through and demolishes your town. And now you're displaced. You've lost your friends and your family. Most of them are probably dead. You have no job anymore. You can't get established because every time you're trying to rebuild your town, the tractor tornado comes through again. So that's dirt. So dirt has no stability. There's no relationships. There's no interconnection between the life. It's just dirt. We don't want dirt. So imagine that the tractor breaks down and we give nature a chance to rebuild. And so the first thing that comes in will be bacteria. And bacteria is the least likely to have died from the tractor tornado. Number one, because it's the smallest and it's harder to chop up. Number two, because it's the most abundant. So there's tons and tons of bacteria. And so bacteria looks like this underneath the microscope, just tiny little dots. But I want you to imagine it like this. In the microbe world, or a game of Pac-Man, there's two major elements that kind of fuel the microbe world. You have carbon, and you can think of those as the little dots of Pac-Man. Carbon's pretty abundant, it's really easy to get, nobody's really fighting over it. And then there's nitrogen, and that's the blinking big dots. So nitrogen is a little trickier. There's not as much, things can fight over it, and everybody wants it. And bacteria, because there are so many of them, and they're really efficient at getting nitrogen, gobble up the nitrogen first. Okay, so now you're Pac-Man, or you're bacteria, and you've gobbled up a ton of carbon and nitrogen. So you're full, you've had a satisfying meal, and then nature calls. So, I'm going to stop you here for a minute and tell you that I grew up in a household where we were not allowed to say the word fart, but for some reason poop was fair game. And so my siblings and I spent a lot of creative energy coming up with the world's finest comments, commentary, and jokes on poop. And so one of my favorite things about microbes is that I get to talk about poop, like a lot. And poop, my friends, is seriously what is making this entire world go around. So, okay, bacteria has to take a dump, right? So, the cool thing about bacteria poop is it's like this poop glue. And why is that important? Well, they have individual soil particles. And when they don't have anything to hold on to, it's really easy to blow away, like the dust or to wash away the erosion. So what happens is the bacteria has this poo glue, and when it poops, it glues soil particles this is now the soil particles are holding onto each other, so it's harder to blow away, it's harder to wash away. And then in between the particles, now those are these little pockets where you can hold water and you can hold oxygen. So now our dirt is building soil structure. It's able to act like a sponge and hold water and air in it. So we're getting better. Next up we have fungus, or fungi, or fungi. And you're probably most familiar with a mushroom with fungus, and mushrooms are the fruit of fungus. But this is hyphae, and hyphae is like where all the action is, and it's underneath the soil. And it's kind of like the equivalent of fungus roots. This is what fungus looks like underneath the microscope. But I want you to think of it like the cowboy or the cowgirl of the microbe world. So one really cool function of fungus is that it is a really good carbon sequesterer. So it keeps a lot of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and stores it in the soil because it takes a lot of carbon to grow the hyphae bodies. And so instead of it being in the air, it's now locked away in the soil. Another really great thing that it does is it also poops. And so we have bacteria, or Pac-Man, or Mrs. Pac-Man, over here pooping and making microaggregates, right? Now, fungus, with its poo glue, uses it like a lasso, and it lassos all of the microaggregates and then makes macroaggregates. Now, we have all this soil that's really sticky, it's not blowing away in the wind, it's not washing away in the water, and look at all those pockets for air and for water to get trapped in. So now we're really building soil structure. So we have soil structure, we have oxygen, we have water, we could use some more nutrients. That's where these guys come in. So this is amoeba, this is cilia, this is flagellate, and they look like that under the microscope. But you can think of them as the ghost of the Pac-Man game. So the ghosts are running around trying to eat bacteria, and that's great because inside of the Pac-Man who ate the nitrogen god, the protozoa eat, and then they have more nitrogen. So in order to really understand how important they are, we need to do a little bit of protozoa poop math. So, put on your math caps. Protozoa, or the ghosts of the Pac-Man game, need 30 dots of carbon and 1 dot of nitrogen for a satisfying meal. If bacteria, Pac-Man, or Mrs. Pac-Man bodies have 5 dots of carbon and 1 dot of nitrogen in them, how many bacteria does a protozoa need to be full of carbon? All right, 6. Yes, so 6 bacteria, or Pac-Man, or Mrs. Pac-Man, need to be eaten to be full of carbon. All right, follow-up question. Protozoa can only handle 1 dot of nitrogen for every 30 dots of carbon. How many extra nitrogen does the protozoa have inside it? Who's got me? Math wizard over here. 5, thank you. So that means that's extra nitrogen that they poop out. So what's really cool about this is now this nitrogen is available for other microbes to take it up, or even more importantly, plants. So I will tell you also that bacteria do poop out extra nitrogen, but the nitrogen they poop out is in this form where only weeds can take it up. So if you have bacteria-dominated soils in your yard, that's where weeds grow. If you don't want weeds, you want protozoa in your yard eating up the bacteria, pooping out the nitrogen so the plants that you love can thrive. So your tomatoes and your trees and your shrubs, anything that's not a weed. So we want nitrogen pooped out from the protozoa. Another thing that poops out nitrogen are nematodes. So they're nutrient cyclers as well. So nematodes can eat bacteria, fungus, protozoa, and other nematodes. And every time they eat any of those, they're pooping out extra nitrogen. This picture is really cool because not only can nematodes eat fungus, but fungus can eat other nematodes. So this is fungal hyphae right here, and what it does, and it has an extra little fungal circle right here, and there's 3 special cells, and when a nematode goes through the trap, it's pressure sensitive, and it tells the 3 cells to fill with water, and they pressurize, and then they strangle the nematode, and then it sucks out all its guts, and it's really cool. So, I think that's cool, but I think this part's the coolest. Alright, so plants, I love plants. Plants are doing their plant thing, doing the photosynthesis. So they're using solar energy to take carbon dioxide and water and make sugars. So they use those sugars to feed themselves and to grow themselves and to have functions. So they actually also can take up to 60% of the sugars that they make and they feed the microbes. So why would they do that? If I asked you to go into your kitchen and make me something with carbohydrates, sugar, and protein, what might you make?
Cake.
Jeez. Cake. I heard cake, thank you. That leads me right where I wanted to go. So a plant can tailor its recipe based on the microbe it's trying to attract. So it might make cakes, it might make cookies, it might make donuts, it might make brownies in the microbe world. So it can attract the type of microbe that it wants, and here's why it's doing that. So here's cake. The bacteria wants to come and eat the cake, and so it eats the cake, and then guess who else wants to eat the bacteria? Protozoa. And the protozoa come in, they eat the bacteria, and then they poop right by the roots, right where the plant wants its nutrients. So certain microbes can bring in certain nutrients, and that's why the plant tailors its recipe based on which nutrient it needs and which microbe it's trying to attract. Cool, right? Plants also have a really cool relationship with something called mycorrhizal fungus, and they're like the Uber Eats drivers of the microbe world. So what happens is the plant needs a nutrient, and then it orders up with Uber Eats, and it says, hey, I need some iron. So the mycorrhizal fungus goes out and finds the iron. And what's also really cool is it's also like go-go gadget arms for plant roots, where plant roots can only go so far, and then the mycorrhizal fungus comes in and extends the plant roots, and then gets the nutrient, brings it back to the plant, and then the plant tips it with carbohydrates and sugars that it made through photosynthesis. Another really cool relationship that plants have with microbes is nitrogen-fixing bacteria. And this is kind of like a landlord-tenant situation where the bacteria gets to live inside the plant roots in this little nodule. It's like a cozy little apartment for the bacteria. And so now those pesky little Pac-Man ghosts aren't able to eat the bacteria because it's got this sweet apartment. And to pay rent, what happens is nitrogen and a special type of, or this bacteria, a special type of bacteria has this like superpower where it can take nitrogen out of the atmosphere and put it into the soil and turn it into a nitrogen dot. So pretty much like finding a special level in Pac-Man where you can literally create the nitrogen dots out of thin air. So it's a pretty sweet deal. Okay, I hope that this has made you interested in microbes and that you are wanting to really help out your microbes in your soil. So here are the top 3 ways you can help them. The first one, don't till your yard. You want to disturb it as little as possible. Don't bring in the tractor tornado. Let your microbes have their microbe life, and they will build up healthy soil that makes your life a lot easier. And it seems counterintuitive because you're like, I have this compacted soil, and now it's going to be all fluffy after I till it. But what you're doing is creating long-term damage from just a short-term solution. susceptible to chemicals. So you might have a fungus in your yard that you're trying to kill, a bad one, and when you spray that fungus, you kill it, but you also kill all the good microbes. And if you foster good microbes instead, kill bad fungus for you. So you really want to build up the health of your soil so they'll take care of all the bad ones for you. So pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, any of the sides, they're killing everything, so don't use them. And then also synthetic fertilizers are adding salts to your soil, and they'll kill your microbes as well. All right, the best thing that you can do is compost. If I could get everyone here to compost, I feel like I could save the world. So, no matter what your situation is, small apartment to giant piece of land, there is a situation for you, and I will do more talks on compost later, so you can follow me on social media, and I'll let you know when those are. But composting. So what's happening is your compost scraps are full of beneficial microbes. They're coating all the surfaces on these scraps. So then you take them to your compost pile, you now have inoculated your compost pile with a ton of beneficial microbes. And when all of the scraps decompose, you're creating this like source of life, this substance that can hold a lot of water, it holds a lot of nutrients, and it's habitat for the microbes to live in. So this is where like the nitrogen dots of the Pac-Man game are coming from. So the more compost you can add to your soil, the better, the more diverse you can make it. The microbes, the better, and the happier your soil will be, and the less work you're going to have to do. It's missing. So I hope that you guys learned something about microbes, that you are inspired to and that you don't treat your soil like dirt. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
So do you just put the compost on top so you don't want it to
She has to, you put your compost on top if you don't want to till, since you don't want to till. And yeah, that's a great way to do it, and the microbes will till it in for you. And if you have earthworms, they're like the champions of natural tilling. So yeah, just put your compost right on top. Yeah. Question?
Yeah, so you said not to till your grass, but having done landscaping, so a tri-mix with topsoil, peat moss, and manure is something that's common that you lay down and mix with the soil in order for the sod to lay well. So is that a negative process in the long run?
Are you tilling it in, or are you just putting it on top of the soil, on the grass?
Tilling it.
So his question was, he does landscaping, or has done landscaping, and he has a mix of topsoil, compost, and
Topsoil, manure, and peat moss.
Topsoil, manure, and peat moss, and he's asking if it's bad that he's tilling it in. So it's great that you're adding this organic material to the soil, but if you could just put it on top and then let nature till it in, then you'd be better off. Yeah.
So, vegetation, for the most part, that's something that for a lot of land and outdoors, I
It's so much fun.
and so I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to do what, like I have salmon, water, things, and I try to put neem oil, get rid of that. What could you recommend for the indoor garden?
So the question is for the indoor gardener, what do you do? And same thing really is you want to encourage the beneficial microbes, and then they create like a force field around your plant, and then they won't let like the aphids and the spider mites and the same things that affect most indoor plants. If you incorporate beneficial microbes, they will fight the bad stuff. So adding compost to your, so finished compost to your houseplants is a great idea. And worm castings is like the miracle solution for adding microbes to your soil. So if you want to compost using red wiggler worms, that is a great way. So if you make compost tea, yeah, keep doing that.
Yeah.
You're good.
You lost her before.
Question.
We lost her.
Yeah. But the worms kind of put her on the bed. I don't mind.
He has a piece of land with dead soil, dirt on there, and he wants to put compost on there, but he's afraid it'll get solarized. The sun will kill the microbes. And if you so the best thing you can do really is add a ton of compost and then put mulch on top of that, or some sort of plant cover, or plant seeds and cover crop seeds, so that you have plant life feeding the microbes in that compost, and then the microbes are feeding the plants, making more plants, more microbes, and then this keeps going on. Yeah. All right, give it up for Kelly one more time, everyone. Woo! I am so going to do things to my indoor jungle, because that's what I'm trying to achieve. And I'm going to definitely reach out to her after this talk so that I can get even more in-depth information. Now, our second and last round of trivia, spooky trivia. I'm very excited about this trivia. Which Harry Potter character is a werewolf? Again. Yes! Professor Remus Lupin. He is totally a werewolf. Awesome. Thank you. Our next one. It's a little bit of a long one, but bear with me. Chant this name on Halloween in a dark room with a candle, and they might either appear in the mirror, reach out of the mirror and scratch your face, or be released from the afterlife to haunt you forever. All the way in the back. Yes! Bloody Mary! Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. All right. Whose remains are said to have come racing down Red Mountain in Manitou Springs in 1929? Yes, ma'am, Emma Crawford. You have got that. That is who the coffin races are after. Now, again, follow, like, review, share on Instagram, Facebook. I did a little checking on the Facebook, on the Book of Faces during our presentation, and I did see some reviews coming in. I appreciate them. There's some pretty awesome ones in there, but I know you guys have more, so come on, get with it, give us your review. Also, while you're getting your drinks and getting some more food, make sure to visit Miss Mandy Penn at our photo booth. Take a picture, have it sent to you, share it with your friends. It's going to be amazing. We'll see you guys back in about 10-15 minutes, okay? Another little break before our final presenter, Michelle, with the Olympic and Paralympic Museum.
Here we go. We're back. Can we hear me? Yes. I know it sounds a little weird. We will work on that to try to make it a little better every time. I might have to just upgrade this microphone. Can you guys hear me? All right. So it's time for our last nerdy speaker of the evening. So let's go back here. Remember, we're doing our contest. When are we giving this thing out? When?
We're going to give it away after she's finished.
All right, so after our next speaker, we're going to give away our little Nerd Night care package for whoever follows, likes, reviews, and shares. Alright, so with that, I would like to bring our next speaker up onto the stage. I hope I say your name correct, because it's 3 long words. Michelle Dusserre Farrell. Is that it? Alright, let's give her a hand. Welcome Michelle to the stage.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Thank you, thank you. Oof.
So down is forward.
Sorry.
Good.
I'm not used to it. That's it. Welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes.
My name is Michelle Dusserre Farrell. Not Farrell. Close,
Okay.
but like Will Ferrell, but not related. I am a 1984 Olympic silver medalist in the sport of gymnastics. And I've worn a lot of different hats in the Olympic movement. The one I'm wearing now, as part of what I do day to day, is working at the new U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum. So how many of you have been to the new museum yet? All right.
We gotta change that.
Maybe, yeah.
Gotta change it.
So hopefully after this presentation, I will pique your interest to come visit us. But tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey as an athlete, some of the cool kind of by the numbers things that you may or may not know, but also how that ties into a little bit of what you'll find in the museum as well with regards to what we offer as kind of a visit experience and telling those stories and those great pieces of history of our Olympic and Paralympic athletes.
So down. Down is forward. There it is.
There we go.
Boom.
So we're going to talk about some metrics and numbers, which athletes are always very focused on. In gymnastics, it's always tenths of a point, thousandths of a point.
There you go.
I didn't touch it, so I wasn't sure. But also, you know, the stories behind athletes, what drives them, what motivates them, and what really kind of comprises and represents Team USA. So here we go, the scribble. So you look at that and you think, gosh, what is that? It's kind of a scribble on a cocktail napkin. But what it really is a vision is what the architects designed for the new museum. So how this turned into that, I'm not the one to answer that. But so if you've been down to now what's called the Park Union District on Sierra Madre and Vermejo, I don't know why this is going by itself. Sorry. You'll see that it's a great piece of architecture designed by Diller's Committee on Renfro out of New York City. But what they intentionally did is made sure that they didn't obstruct the view of Pikes Peak. So if you walk down Vermejo, you get this amazing view of Pikes Peak. It was a project that started in 2012 with then Mayor Steve Bach and Dick Celeste, who was at the time the president of Colorado College. So the Olympic Committee has been here for 42 years. We're now called Olympic City USA. So where else would a museum be other than Colorado Springs? It was the perfect setting and the perfect place. Construction started in 2017 and doors opened in July of 2020 in a pandemic, which was challenging, but we've been open just over a year, and so it's been quite the ride, but we had a great summer with the Tokyo Olympic Games. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So by the numbers, 10,500 is typically the number of athletes that compete in a games. Sorry, you guys. In Tokyo, there were about 11,000 athletes that competed. So there's a set program or schedule for the Olympic Games, and that number is set in place by the IOC, but a host country is allowed to add sports. So what were some of those sports for Tokyo? Surfing was a new sport, skateboarding, sport climbing was another one. Karate was a sport that was added for just Tokyo because karate has, its origins in Japan, and it's a very popular sport in the country of Japan. But that is basically the base number of athletes that compete. 2,980 are the total number of medals that our athletes have won over the last 125 years in the modern games. We rank number 1. So, second is the Soviet Union, which no longer is a country that exists, but Russia also ranks up there in total medal counts. So combined between Soviet Union and Russia, they rank second. 26 is the number of medals that were won by Stanford athletes. So if you were to look at Stanford athletes as its own separate team, they actually beat Canada in the medal count in Tokyo. So we have a number of athletes who come from universities. Our university system is very healthy, and it produces, world-class athletes. And if they were looked at as a country, they would be their own, rank in a medal chart. And again, 104 are the number of medals won by our Paralympic athletes. Team USA on the Olympic side won a total of 113 medals in Summer Games. So how many watched the games this summer? Hard to watch. Tokyo with a 15-hour time difference made it hard to watch live coverage, but they certainly did lots of recaps in the primetime coverage. So a little bit about our building and our space at the museum. We're 60,000 square feet, 25,000 of which is exhibit space. We have a total of 187 medals on display in the museum. So out of that 2,980, 187 of those are on display. One large collection is towards the end of the visit. It's a collection that was basically accumulated by a private collector who gifted those medals to the U.S. Olympic Committee, which then we have on display via a loan. But we have some other really amazing and great medals in that collection as well, including the very first medal won by an American athlete, but it was also the very first medal awarded at the Modern Games. It was James Connolly. He was a triple jumper, and he won what we call the first place medal. Back then it was a silver medal, but he was the winner of that in the triple jump in 1896. We have that on display in the museum. We are the only destination for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Hall of Fame. So now visit the museum and see the Hall of Fame as well. And there are 33 member institutions as part of the Olympic Museum Network. There's only one in the United States, and that's right here downtown. Anybody know what 29 feet, 2.5 inches signifies? Long jump?
Pole vault?
Who's long jump?
I don't know, because I'm trying to catch up with that.
So that is the distance that Bob Beamon jumped in 1968, Mexico City, where he set the Olympic record along with the world record. And just for frame of reference, one of our areas in the museum is the atrium. This is our atrium area here. There's a platform that is roughly 29 feet, 2.5 inches tall. So you can get kind of a distance perspective. It's also pretty close to what a 10-meter platform distance would be. So imagine taking that distance, laying it horizontally, and jumping that distance 52 years ago.
Wow.
So a little bit of historical perspective on our Team USA athletes over time. So again, mentioning James Connolly being the first Olympic champion in 1896, and a timeline fast forwarding to 2021. So what did our athlete, kind of profile of our athletes back in the 1800s, early 1900s, all were amateur. In fact, you could not earn a penny or have a dime to your name through athletic competition, or else you'd be deemed ineligible. But most of our athletes were, they made one team and then they moved on. They went back to school. They went back to their jobs. James Connolly was a student at Harvard. He really, really wanted to compete in the Olympic Games and went to the administrators at Harvard to ask for a leave of absence. They denied his leave of absence. He left Harvard, went on, became an Olympic champion, and several years later was awarded an honorary doctorate, which he declined. So many athletes were members of the military, so they had military ties. As you started to move into the later years, probably the 50s and 60s, athletes were then making consecutive team. They were coming back and making a second and third team. Of course, Jesse Owens' amazing performance in 1936. He had amazing success in the Olympic Games, but when he came back to the States, had a hard time finding work, assimilating back just to finding a job, and so he had jobs such as manager of a dry cleaning store. I think he also managed, it's escaping me now, but I think he was a gas station attendant as well. So, Olympic gold didn't necessarily, job security and security with things outside of sport. Kind of creeping into the 60s, one of those iconic moments that we probably all remember was the medal stand protest of Tommy Smith and John Carlos. So now you started to see that athletes were using their voice and were speaking up about injustice off the field of play. That then kind of led into athletes speaking up about getting paid. 1984, the games that I competed in was a commercial success. The games in LA turned a $225 million profit. So now all of a sudden there was value in competition, value for the athletes to seek commercial opportunities, and so you started to see athletes who were now being paid or were able to make a living off of their competition. 1992 Dream Team, that was the first team of professional athletes that we all probably remember. 96 was a banner year for female athletes. We had, that was the first year that softball, women's soccer were contested, both winning gold in those games. And so that was huge for women's sports. You go now into the early 2000s and you start seeing some of our veterans coming back from Iraq, combat injured veterans who now are making Paralympic teams. Melissa Stockwell, who is a local here in Colorado Springs. She's lived here now for a few years. She was the first combat veteran to compete as a Paralympian in 2008. And then now to 2021, where you now start to see a more equitable team of women and men. I think women comprised a little over 50% of our Team USA for Tokyo. And of course, Allison Felix winning her 11th Olympic medal, becoming the most decorated track athlete. Do you remember a couple of years ago, Allison separating with Nike?
Yes.
She took leave for pregnancy, and they came back with a contract that was not good for her and for what was representative of her values. So she left Nike, went with Athleta, and really, really started to pave the way for women's rights when it came to having the ability to have leave for pregnancy. So yeah, just a little bit of a snapshot of kind of how Team USA has changed over the years.
This is not working.
Okay, so I'm not sure how this one will. So we all sit and watch. I call the Olympics the best binge watching experience. 2 weeks of just sitting and getting kind of immersed in archery, curling, sports that you would normally watch and enjoy. It's that 2 weeks where everybody goes all in. So what I'm going to play here is it takes about 6 seconds, but I don't know if you'll probably remember this. No, didn't want to play. So if you remember that vault, yeah. So did those athletes look recognizable to you? So 2012, Michaela Maroney on the left, Jordan Weaver on the right. Michaela performed the most amazing vault. Should have been a perfect score, but that vault that's right. So from start to finish, that vault takes about 6 seconds. So for us, we're sitting there and watching an amazing 6 seconds of performance. But that vault represented well over 10 years of training and preparation for Michaela. So when you watch athletes compete,
check it out on YouTube.
Yes, you can find it on YouTube. So again, it's, for that 6 second performance, it's 10 plus years of training and hard work. Now, I don't know if you all are fans of Malcolm Gladwell and his series of books, but he talks about 10,000 hours of training to become, at an elite level of whatever profession or, discipline that you seek to become a professional in. So that equates to about 7 years of training, 30 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. For me, I made an Olympic team at age 15. But I had done the sport for 10 years. Now, was that 50 weeks of 30 hours a week for those 10 years? No, but it was certainly, 30 hours a week for that last 5 to 6 years leading up to the games. I had a normal school schedule, would go to school first period to fifth period, and then with my school district, we were able to I was able to get credit for PE and make that my 6th period class. Then I would go to the gym and spend 5.5 to 6 hours there, Monday through Friday, training and doing my craft. It was rare that we would take more than a week off each year. So, but part of that journey is what we like to tell in the museum. And so, basically, we tell you a little bit of the history, but we also focus on 3 really important attributes about an athlete's journey that, as a collective, I was part of a group of athletes that were brought together to kind of craft some of these exhibit designs. And there were 3 really important topics of conversation that took place with athletes as we were talking about what is important to convey about the athlete journey. One being how stinking hard it is to make an Olympic or Paralympic team, especially representing the U.S. So within the U.S., we have oodles of talent, lots of kids who are out there training and pushing one another to be the very best. We have about 12,202 athletes that have been rostered as part of Olympic and Paralympic teams. We all have a place for them in this kind of digital map that's in the museum. We have now a lot of work to do in adding about 866 athletes from Tokyo. But what are the odds of making an Olympic team? They're better to be drafted by the NFL or by the NBA. 0.0013% that you would be named as a swimming Olympian. And the odds are even less to earn a medal at the games. So But again, it's, you know, Team USA is made up of so many different sports with athletes who have so many different talents and skills and tips that work for everybody. For me, gymnastics was a sport that I loved because I loved going upside down. I loved just flipping and twisting. It was fun. But that's not for everybody. And certainly there are sports that, you know, I couldn't imagine trying or crafting as, you know, being an elite level of those sports. And the thing is that we leave a lot of athletes at home. So for me, it was far more difficult and stressful to be named to the team than it was actually to compete in the games. I think as an athlete, you are confident in your skill that you can perform at games, but if you don't make the team, that doesn't happen. So a lot more of the stress and the kind of fretting of that Olympic journey for athletes in the US is just getting named to the team. For sports like track and field and swimming, we often leave athletes at home who have a chance to win medals in the games because we just don't have enough spots. So swimming and track in particular, gymnastics is another sport where we just have a rich talent base that we just don't have enough spots for athletes to have that chance. There's also a rule in gymnastics that you can only allow a certain number of athletes to advance to finals, and so that's also a case of amazing athletes. Jordan Weaver was one where she had finished in the top 4 after the preliminaries, but her rule is that only 2 athletes can advance. So here she is, one of the top 5 in the world, and doesn't have a chance to win a medal. So silly rules, but so the other thing that athletes talked about when we were talking about the design of the museum is, what was that moment that you had as a kid to sort of inspire you or to be instrumental in crafting your dreams to be an Olympian or Paralympian? And I don't know about you guys, but for me, it was a pretty poignant moment to watch this. That looks familiar, so that's Nite COS, 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal. Nadia represented the country of Romania, and she scored the first perfect 10. But I do want to point out that scoreboard. So, and I remember this clearly, I was an 8-year-old, but there was confusion. You know, she did this amazing routine, score goes up, and shows 1.0. And there was, you know, like, the announcers were trying to figure out, and there was, you know, a lot of commotion. And then all of a sudden she jumps back up onto the competition floor and starts waving. And the announcers figured out that she indeed received a 10.0, but the scoreboard wasn't crafted to allow for a score of 10.0 because nobody thought it was going to happen. Well, guess what? She made it happen. And for me, that was, you know, critical to, as a kid, see something that was thought to be impossible actually be possible. So for me, it gave me the license to dream that, gosh, if she could score, you know, perfect 10, the impossible, why can't I dream? It may be impossible, but she did that, so why not? So, but one of my other favorite memories, Miracle on Ice. Everybody remember where they were when they heard those results? So, of course, it was not the final game, it was the semifinal game. The U.S. against the Soviet Union, that improbable 4th goal at 10 minutes, and then at 3 seconds, Al Michaels saying, "Do you believe in miracles?" So it's one of those moments that you remember exactly where you were when you heard it, and it is, you know, it has been ranked the most important sports moment in U.S. history. So the third and most important moment for athletes, or most important kind of part of that journey, is now you've made that Olympic and Paralympic team, and you get to walk into the opening ceremony. So we have a really cool exhibit at the museum. It simulates sort of the parade of nations walking into the opening ceremony. but it is by far the most memorable part of, it was the most memorable part of my Olympic experience. It surpassed winning a medal. Got to see my parents in the stands as I was walking in. The games were in Los Angeles, so it was home for me. I had grown up in Southern California as well. But also getting to walk in with not only my gymnastics teammates, but my U.S. teammates from track and field, swimming, archery, cycling, volleyball, and realizing that this event was so much bigger than any one person's athletic pursuit. That was the really cool part of that experience. And so, by far, it's the number one memory. We've had athletes come to the museum and say, gosh, I didn't get to march an opening ceremony because my competition was the next day. If you remember 2016, Michael Phelps marching with the flag, he was the flag bearer for the Rio Games. He agreed to do that as long as he had transportation there and back, because he was competing the next day. So they had to arrange for private transportation to get Michael there, march one lap around the stadium, get right back out. So it could be easily be a 6 to 8 hour ordeal from lining up, getting into buses, transporting over to the stadium, waiting, more waiting, probably 3 hours waiting, because if you've watched it, it's a 4-hour ceremony. And they come in by alphabetical order, so the U.S. often comes in at the very end, and then you're in the infield standing for another hour. So it could be an arduous day for athletes, and some opt not to do it, just because it can impact competition. So a little bit about medals and torches. So it's probably one of those artifacts or pieces that people can connect with, because it's a great sort of look through history. The museum does have an amazing collection of torches and medals. We are the only place in the world that has a complete collection of medals on display. The IOC in Lausanne, Switzerland also has a complete collection of torches. The torches date back to 1936. That's when the torch relay started. Prior to that, they had a cauldron lighting, but not an actual relay where the flame would kind of be passed from torch to torch to then light the cauldron. 1936, with the torch relay, it was really an idea of Hitler's to do the torch relay as part of his propaganda campaign that he used the games for. So what was, really started as a campaign around propaganda for his cause turned into a symbol of peace and unity. Now that we see, the torch relay display. Now the games are going to come back to the States in 28, and the torch relay will likely come through Colorado Springs again. It came through in 1996 and 2002, and I got the chance to run that relay, and it was an amazing moment. The first time with my husband and family members of mine, the second time with my daughter, so it was a really cool experience. So a little bit about medals. So we, again, have that collection on display at the museum, but there is a real specific process around medal design, especially for the Summer Games medals. This actual medal design was a design that carried from 1928 to 2004 with the front part of the medal, and so each medal is crafted by the host country. The winter medals have a little bit more liberty with design than the summer medals. So if you look at the collection, the front of the medals will look very similar from the 20s through 2004. The back of the medals can have more of that unique design. And maybe later I'll have a little show and tell with this medal. athletes. The Olympic Games don't happen without the athletes. Here in Colorado Springs, we have about 90 athletes who call Colorado Springs home. Since opening, we've had about 300 athletes visit the museum. We've had some amazing visits from athletes like Peggy Fleming, who's in the lower middle picture there, John Neighbor upper right, both are members of our Hall of Fame. John Register is a local here. He's a Paralympic athlete, and so he's standing by his prosthetic leg that's on display at the museum. But again, athletes and their amazing stories and history are what make Olympic City, USA what it is. It makes the museum experience, dynamic and fun and interesting. We have athletes like Carl Lewis here this summer. Mary Lorette was here. She and the rest of my teammates were here doing a great event. Cheryl Sleeps and Lenny Wilkins were here as well. So, but athletes aren't just numbers and metrics. They're also artists, and they are, they do amazing things outside of their competition in the sport. So Peter Shippard was a teammate of mine in 1984. He was an Olympic fencer. He's also an amazing artist. So on display in the lobby, as you get ready to enter the museum, he had crafted this amazing sculpture called Olympus Within. He used the inspiration of Outboarder and a discus thrower. On the far right, you can also see the design of the museum has that movement and swooping motion. So, Peter's sculpture, the design of the museum are really in the spirit of what athletes bring, which is motion, energy, and really that just amazing stories and journeys that we all get inspired by. So, with that, I did bring my medal. So, you can get an up close look at a medal, you can hold it. It's made of real silver. It's heavy, so that's the one thing that people usually remark when they hold it. A lot of questions I get are about the ribbon. So the first question is, why is it not red, white, and blue? Well, the Olympics are an international event, and so typically the ribbon will represent the color scheme of those games. So if you were to have gone to Los Angeles during that time and during the games, you would have seen banners and signage and everything around all of the venues that have the same colors. So what you take away from the games with the medal is kind of that look and feel of the games. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
So the medals that you have,
we have a complete collection dating back from 1896 to Pyeongchang, 18. So we don't yet have a Tokyo collection, but what is on display is a complete collection of every medal from 1896 to 2018. Part of the Gordy Crawford family collection. I think there were, so that's his private collection. There were 8 medals that he didn't yet have as part of his private collection. For those medals that he didn't have, he then went to athletes who were owners of those medals and did a separate loan agreement. So we have medals that are from Steve Holcomb. We've got some medals from Olympic figure skaters. Tony Urban, who was a swimmer, we have his gold medal from 2016. So whatever medal was not part of that collection, we then sought to, go directly to an athlete who was an owner of that medal to put on display. So the ones that are part of Gordy Crawford's collection, he purchased those at auction. So, and medals can go anywhere from 15,000 to 40,000 for ones that may not be associated with a, person of note or a performance of note, or in the, what is generally known by the public. But, that like, I would say like a 1980 gold medal from late placid Olympic hockey would be easily mid six figures. So, because that has a pretty important story behind it. So I think that there was a hockey player that did put his medal on auction, and I think the going bid was $250,000. I don't know what it actually sold for, but.
What events should museum have in store in the next few months?
So that's for what we have in store in the next. So we do member events each month. So members can come and we have athletes who come and speak, and we do kind of a Q&A with them, and then members can ask questions. We did a lot of events this summer. We had special events, so we did an event with Carl Lewis, we did an event with my 1984 team members. We are looking probably towards February with the kickoff of the games. Anybody know what October 27th is coming up in about 7 days? It's the 100 days out for Beijing 2022. So once that 100 days out hits, then you're going to start to see, athletes being selected and the build up towards the start of the Beijing Games, which is February 4th. So we're going to be doing events around kind of the Beijing Games as well. So viewing parties, watch parties, special events, athletes visiting. So in the planning stages.
So from being a very high-level athlete, what is your movement protocol like now at this stage of your life?
What's my
movement? Yeah, like what are you doing?
So gymnastics is not a lifelong sport. It's not something that I could keep doing, indefinitely, like running or tennis or something that you would kind of continue beyond. So it was a struggle for me to find what was next. What do I do if I'm not doing gymnastics? So that's all I had known what to do and how to do 30 hours a week, 5 days a week, for 50 weeks a year. So I took up running and just became a recreational runner. Did 5 and 10Ks, half and full marathons for a time. Try to do combat classes, step aerobics. So I find my training as a gymnast and having that like jumping and plyometric feel. I feel like that's where I have to. Those are the types of fitness routines that I have to do to feel like I get a workout in. I know at some point that's going to have to come to an end, but I'm doing it as long as I can. So.
We got one more.
Oh, sorry. One more. So back when I competed, the format was that you had to be an all-arounder. So had to compete on vault, uneven bars, balance beam, and floor exercise. Now the format is different, so that you can have an event specialist, like Michaela Maroney, who's vault was amazing. She was an event specialist, so she only competed on the vault. And now athletes can have that specialization. My hope and my fingers are crossed that Simone takes a little bit of time off and she'll decide to come back and compete in Paris, maybe as an event specialist. So I can see her doing vault, floor exercise. So we would all be so happy for that. So, well, thank you.
All right, everyone, please give it up for our Olympic silver medalist, Michelle. I mean, I know I can't do that. So, it's the end of the night, guys. Oh, I know, sad. Come on, now. I've been stalking our Facebook page. And I've been looking at these reviews for this prize We have our bad girl Samantha, our bad woman, sorry. I have to make sure that the pronouns are correct. Now, is there an Amber Ditto in the house? This chick right here. I'm going to read out this. I'm going to read this review, just so you guys have an FYI for next time, so you can step your game up, because it's pretty awesome. Now I'm old, so I'm going to try to see this. This was my brother and I's second time coming to Nerd Night, and let me tell you, experiencing Nerd Night is comparable, but better, to a night sitting on the couch, binging your way through Netflix or YouTube. 1 second, you're learning about cryptocurrency, which we did in a couple of months past. And the next, you're down a Norse mythology rabbit hole. Hello, our 16-year-old that just happened today. No matter where you end up, one thing is guaranteed. You'll learn something you didn't know before, and you'll have fun in the process. Being surrounded by fellow nerds is gratifying in a way only nerds understand. We're hooked. That's what I'm talking about. Come over here and grab your soda. Come here. Congratulations. You're amazing. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Yes. I'm so happy. Yeah, make sure you get a photo. We're going to be around for another few minutes after we're done now here. But we have a few more things that we need to share with you. Now, the next Nerd Night is here, right here on this main stage at Coati, Wednesday, November 17th. And it is the last Nerd Night of 2021. Why? Because we're not going to compete with Santa holidays, with Santa. I mean, who can compete with that guy? No one can compete with them. So we're going to let you guys have a nerd break. And we're going to come back in January of 2022 with amazing speakers. However, I already have 2 of the 3 speakers for November, and you guys, it's going to be awesome. So, FYI. If you have presenting ideas, if you are a nerd and you want to be on this stage, nerdnightcos@gmail.com. Send us an email, reach out to us, let us know. Again, follow my review if you haven't gotten the gist of the whole thing. Yes, spread the word with the fellow nerds. Everyone wants to know about us and have a good time. Facebook.com, Nerd Night COS. Instagram, Nerd Night COS. We made that kind of easy for you guys, right? Flip and we also host another awesome community building event called Memoirs, True Story Unfiltered. We host that at 3 East Comedy Club. It's here in downtown. Not that far away, you can walk over there. We have our next event for Memoirs is this coming Monday, October 25th. If you want to hang out, take a picture of that little QR code. Boop, 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 boop. Right here. Get that. Get your ticket. It's free. It's free. It's another cool event. You get to connect with your fellow amazing people that live here in the community that call this place home. Yes, so we would love to see you there as well. If you have a story to tell, I told part of my story at a Memoirs, and it was not a dry eye in the house. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but you guys gotta go.